The Kansas City Chiefs drafted him to be the future of their offense. They gave him Patrick Mahomes. They gave him Andy Reid. They gave him a dynasty that was already built and waiting for him to step into. All he had to do was stay out of his own way. He couldn't do it. And now, in the most critical offseason in the Patrick Mahomes era, the Kansas City Chiefs are staring at a roster decision so painful, so complicated, so layered with legal danger and football brilliance and shattered potential that even the people inside that building can't agree on what to do next. Because on one hand, Rashee Rice is the most naturally gifted wide receiver the Chiefs have had in years. On the other hand, he is currently the defendant in a civil lawsuit alleging domestic violence against his former girlfriend. He is serving 5 years of probation from a felony conviction. He is on the NFL's radar for a second conduct violation that could cost him 10 to 12 games, possibly the entire 2026 season. He has played just 28 of a possible 58 games across 3 years, and the franchise that once called him their cornerstone offensive weapon has now, quietly, shockingly, devastatingly, begun building their offseason as if he doesn't exist. That is the decision. That is the line in the sand, and the story of how it got here, the story of one of the most talented and troubled players in the league, and what his unraveling means for the Kansas City Chiefs' desperate attempt to rebuild around a recovering Patrick Mahomes, is one of the most compelling, most painful, most impossible to look away stories in all of professional football. Let's go back to the beginning, because this story starts with promise, the kind of promise that makes franchises believe they have found something special. April 2023, the NFL Draft. Kansas City is on the clock in the second round with the 63rd overall pick. They select Rashee Rice, wide receiver out of SMU. He is not a household name coming out of college. He did not play at Alabama or Ohio State or Georgia. He played at a smaller program in Dallas, where he quietly put together one of the most statistically dominant seasons in Conference USA history. In his senior year, he caught 96 passes for 1,355 yards and 10 touchdowns. He ran crisp routes. He had soft hands. He had the kind of yards after catch ability, that explosive sudden burst after the reception that coaches spend years trying to teach and usually cannot. The Chiefs believed they had found a hidden gem, a second-round steal who, playing alongside Patrick Mahomes in Andy Reid's offense, could become one of the most dangerous receivers in the entire conference. In year one, the 2023 season, Rashee Rice proved every one of those scouts right. He caught 79 passes for 938 yards and 5 touchdowns in 16 games. He was electric. He was confident. He was everything the Chiefs had hoped for and more. His yards after catch were remarkable. His ability to turn a 5-yard completion into a 15-yard gain was exactly the weapon that Mahomes needed to keep defenses honest in the short to intermediate passing game. The Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl that year, and Rashee Rice was a legitimate part of why. He was 23 years old in his rookie year on a dynasty, producing at the level of a reliable number 2 receiver. The ceiling looked endless, the future looked bright, and every conversation about the next great Kansas City wide receiver began and ended with number 4. And then, the night of March 30th, 2024, everything changed. Dallas, Texas, a Saturday night. A Lamborghini Urus traveling at 119 miles per hour. 119. To put that in perspective, the standard highway speed limit in Texas is 70 miles per hour. Rice was doing nearly twice that, and he was not alone. His friend, in a separate vehicle, a Corvette, was traveling alongside him at 116 miles per hour. The two cars were racing on a public highway in the middle of the night in a city full of people who had no idea that two men in exotic cars were treating their streets like a drag strip. And then came the crash. The chain reaction collision involved multiple vehicles. 7 people were injured, not fatally, but injured. Real people. People who woke up that morning without any expectation that their day would end with medical bills, trauma, and a lawsuit. And after the crash, according to prosecutors, Rashee Rice did not stop. He did not check on the people in the other vehicles. He did not call 911. He did not wait for the paramedics or the police or the people whose lives he had just shattered at 119 miles per hour. He got out of his car and he ran. He left the scene on foot. Think about that. Think about what it takes, what kind of panic, what kind of terrible decision-making in the worst possible moment to leave 7 injured people on a highway and run away. When the story broke, the NFL was quiet, the Chiefs were quiet, and Rashee Rice, through his attorneys, began the long, slow process of damage control. He paid more than $115,000 in restitution to help cover the medical expenses of the people he'd injured. He made a public statement expressing genuine remorse. He pleaded guilty to 2 third-degree felony charges, collision involving serious bodily injury, and racing on a highway causing bodily injury. The sentence? 30 days in jail, 5 years of probation. The NFL sentence? A 6-game suspension to open 2025. And Kansas City? Kansas City held on. They kept him on the roster. They issued a careful statement. They gave their most promising young receiver the same benefit of the doubt that organizations always extend to young players with talent. The quiet belief that this was a terrible mistake that would never happen again. A lesson learned. A second chance earned. They were wrong. But before we get to the second crisis, let's talk about what happened in the 2024 season, because it matters enormously to the full picture. Coming into 2024, Rashee Rice had everything in front of him. A second year in Reid's system, a healthier understanding of what the offense needed from him, a quarterback who had already proven he could get him the ball in every situation. The stage was set for a breakout season. He played 4 games. 4. In Week 4, in one of the most bizarre and painful moments of the entire season, Rashee Rice was chasing down a Christian Fulton interception trying to prevent a pick 6 when he collided with Mahomes, who was attempting to do the same thing. The collision was accidental, chaotic, just bad luck in the worst possible moment, but the result was catastrophic for Rice. Torn LCL. Season over. Just like that. He missed 13 games, caught 24 passes for 288 yards and 2 touchdowns in the 4 games he played. The season that was supposed to be the comeback, the redemption arc, the year Rashee Rice finally put it all together, became a footnote in the injury report. And the Chiefs, already stretched at wide receiver, limped through the rest of 2024 without their best pass catcher. And then came 2025, the year that was supposed to be the comeback, the redemption arc, the year Rashee Rice finally put it all together. Except it began with a 6-game suspension. He couldn't even participate in training camp with his teammates, while the Chiefs were installing new schemes, building chemistry, preparing for the season. Rice was serving his penalty, watching from a distance, counting the weeks until he could return. When he finally did return in Week 7, once the suspension was served, the flashes were there. The talent hadn't gone anywhere. In the 8 games he played in 2025, he caught 53 passes for 571 yards and 5 touchdowns. His 8 yards after catch per reception led every wide receiver in the NFL with at least 50 catches, led the entire league. 8 yards after every single catch, on a team that finished 6-11, on a team that was losing its quarterback in Week 15. Rashee Rice was still the most explosive weapon in the Chiefs' passing game when he was on the field. But then, a concussion in the final weeks of the season. He was placed on injured reserve alongside 3 of his teammates, ending his year early. The season that had started with a suspension ended on IR. And the stat that tells the whole story, the stat that captures everything you need to know about Rashee Rice's career so far, is this. In 3 NFL seasons, he has played 28 of a possible 58 games. 28. Less than half. And then came February 2026, and the story got worse.
TMZ published a report. Then Adam Schefter confirmed it. Then Ari Meirov broke the details. And within hours, the information was everywhere. Dakota Jones, Rashee Rice's former girlfriend, had filed a civil lawsuit in Dallas County, Texas. The lawsuit alleged that Rice had engaged in physical abuse against her from December 2023 until July 2025. December 2023. That is not a recent accusation. That is an allegation that begins in the same window as Rice's rookie year, the same season he was catching touchdowns and building his legacy in the Kansas City dynasty, the same season the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. She is seeking more than $1 million in damages. Rice's attorney, Sean Lindsay, issued a statement immediately. The attorney denied the allegations.
They began building their offseason as if Rashee Rice was not on the roster. Brett Veach went to the NFL Combine in Indianapolis in February 2026 and did not speak about Rice as a building block. He did not map out the offense around Rice's return. He did not do any of the things a general manager does when he believes a specific player is central to his plans. He spoke about finding wide receivers, about adding bodies at the position, about addressing the receiver room with urgency, about not counting on any single player to carry the weight at a position that had proven over and over again to be unreliable. The Chiefs currently have 5 wide receivers on their roster: Rice, Xavier Worthy, Jalen Royals, Jason Brownlee, and Jimmy Holiday. That is a group that, in the estimation of virtually every analyst covering this team, is not sufficient to support a returning Patrick Mahomes in a competitive AFC West. So Veach went shopping. He began exploring wide receiver free agents. He began evaluating draft prospects at the position in the 2026 class. He began constructing a plan, a real plan, a funded plan, a plan with actual resources behind it that assumed 0 games from Rashee Rice. As one insider put it, the logical thing for Kansas City to do is construct their offseason as if Rice will not be available at all. If he ends up being cleared, if the lawsuit gets dropped, if the NFL decides not to act, if everything somehow resolves in his favor, then it is a tremendous bonus. But you cannot build your offense around a bonus. You build around certainty. And right now, Rashee Rice is the opposite of certainty. Here is the hardest part of this story, the part that makes it genuinely tragic and not just cautionary. Rashee Rice, when he is on the football field, is extraordinary. Not good, not solid, extraordinary. The 8 yards after catch per reception that led the entire NFL in 2025 among high-volume receivers, that is not a fluke. That is not a lucky statistic generated by playing against soft defenses or catching passes in space that anyone could have turned into yards. That is elite football instinct. That is the burst, the balance, the spatial awareness that separates receivers who are good from receivers who are game-changing. ESPN analyst Trey Wingo said it plainly on his podcast in early 2026. The Chiefs view Rice as their best non-Mahomes player on offense. That is the honest truth of it. Strip away the legal trouble, the suspensions, the injury history, the civil lawsuit, the probation, and what you have left is the most dangerous short to intermediate receiver in the Kansas City passing game. A player whose talent level, if fully expressed over a full season, would transform this offense. That is what makes this so painful for Andy Reid, for Brett Veach, for the organization that believed in him, for the coaches who spent hours installing him into the system. They are not moving on from a liability. They are moving on from a gift. But here is the reality of professional sports that no one wants to say out loud. A player who cannot be counted on to be on the field is not actually an asset. He is a variable. And building a contender around a variable, around a player who might play 16 games or might play 2, who might be the best receiver in your offense or might be serving a suspension in a hotel room somewhere while his teammates prepare for a playoff run, is not a strategy. It is a gamble. And the Kansas City Chiefs have already lost that gamble twice. They cannot afford to lose it a third time. So what does the roster actually look like going forward? This is the part of the story that most people are not paying enough attention to, because while the Rashee Rice drama has consumed the headlines, Brett Veach has been quietly working on a restructure that goes far beyond one player. Patrick Mahomes' contract was restructured, converting $54.45 million into a signing bonus and freeing up $43.56 million in cap space. The Chiefs traded cornerback Trent McDuffie to the Los Angeles Rams in exchange for 2 first-round picks, a clear signal that they are willing to sacrifice present-day defensive talent for future building capital. They have 6 picks in the 2026 NFL Draft. 2 of them are first-rounders. The wide receiver class in 2026 is loaded. Missouri's Luther Burden III, one of the most explosive route runners at the college level in years. Ohio State's Jeremiah Smith. Texas's Matthew Golden. There are options, real options, players who could come in and immediately compete for the #1 spot in Andy Reid's offense. And then there's the Kyle Pitts conversation, the tight end from Atlanta, who at just 24 years old has the physical profile of a generational player, but has never had the quarterback to unlock it. The Chiefs have the draft capital, they have the cap space, and with Travis Kelce aging into a shorter route tree, a young, explosive Pitts paired alongside him in 2 tight end sets would give Mahomes something he has never had: 2 elite receiving weapons at the tight end position simultaneously. This is what the rebuild looks like. This is what Veach is building toward. And somewhere in the middle of it, somewhere between the cap restructures and the draft picks and the free agent signings and the off-season workouts, there was a young man named Rashee Rice, sitting with his lawyers, waiting to find out what the NFL is going to do. The question everyone keeps asking is, should the Chiefs cut him? And the answer, maddening as it is not as simple as it sounds. From a financial standpoint, releasing Rice would cost Kansas City less than $500,000 in dead cap money. In a league where teams absorb tens of millions in dead money from misguided contracts, that is essentially nothing. The financial argument for keeping him is not compelling. From a talent standpoint, releasing him means walking away from the most gifted skill player on the offense. It means accepting that your wide receiver room, Xavier Worthy and 4 wide receivers most NFL fans cannot name, is your starting point heading into 2026. That is a significant sacrifice of on-field quality. But here's the argument that tips the scale. Rashee Rice's rookie contract expires after 2026. This is the final year of his deal. If the Chiefs keep him and he gets suspended for 10 to 12 games, which is the realistic projection from multiple insiders, they have spent an entire year managing his situation, dealing with the PR fallout, navigating the NFL investigation, and getting almost nothing on the field in return. And at the end of it, he walks out the door as a free agent, and everything that happened becomes someone else's problem. Why go through all of that for half a season of production from a player you probably can't sign to an extension anyway? No team, even the Kansas City Chiefs, with their reputation for player development and second chances, is going to give a long-term, multi-million-dollar contract to a player currently being reviewed for his 2nd personal conduct violation while serving 5 years of probation. The contract extension is dead. The long-term relationship is over. The only question is whether they use him for whatever games he's available in 2026, or whether they close the chapter now and redirect those resources toward players who can actually be counted on. Here's what I think happens. Kansas City does not cut Rashee Rice right now. Not today, not this week. They're too smart to absorb the media storm of a release before the NFL completes the investigation. They keep him on the roster, they build around him as if he doesn't exist, they add wide receivers through the draft and free agency, and they wait. If the NFL suspends him for 10 to 12 games, the decision makes itself. You keep him on the back half of the roster, you let him play whatever games he's eligible for, and at the end of the season, you let his contract expire and you wish him well. If the NFL investigation somehow concludes without discipline, if the civil suit gets dropped, if everything somehow resolves in Rice's favor, then suddenly you have an unexpected asset, a receiver who was supposed to be a zero and is now back in the building, hungry to prove himself, still the most explosive yards after catch weapon on the roster. Either way, the Kansas City Chiefs are not betting their 2026 season on this man. Not anymore. Because this is bigger than Rashee Rice now. This is about what Patrick Mahomes comes back to. He tore his ACL and LCL in December 2025. He is in a rehabilitation room right now, working every single day to get back on the field. He has told the world he will return stronger, and no one who knows this man, who has watched him play, who has seen what he does in the fourth quarter when everything is on the line, no one doubts him. But what he comes back to matters. The weapons around him matter. The stability of the roster matters. The certainty that when he steps back on that Arrowhead turf for the first time in 2026, he will have receivers who are present, available, prepared, and committed to the season. That matters enormously. Rashee Rice right now cannot provide that certainty. And so the Kansas City Chiefs, the franchise that has been to 4 Super Bowls in 6 years, that has built its identity around doing the smart thing even when the smart thing is painful, are doing the smart thing. They are planning for a world without him. Not because they want to, not because they don't see the talent, not because they don't remember every electric play, every impossible catch, every touchdown he turned into pure electricity in those brief windows when everything was working. They are planning for a world without him, because they have learned the hard way over 3 seasons that the world with him is not a world they can count on. And in football, as in everything else, you can only build on what holds. If this story hit you in the gut, if you felt the weight of what it means to watch this much talent dissolve under this much chaos, drop a comment below. Tell me what you think the Chiefs should do. Tell me if you believe Rashee Rice can turn it around. Tell me if you think there's another team out there willing to take the risk the Chiefs are no longer willing to take. And subscribe, because the Kansas City story in 2026 is unlike anything we've seen from this franchise in the Mahomes era. A dynasty in reconstruction, a quarterback rehabbing from the worst injury of his career, a receiver under investigation, a roster being rebuilt